The following is a special multiple episode presentation of the End of a Species podcast. During these episodes, you may notice that the signature catchphrase of the show is not used. This is intentional and should not be construed as a peace treaty between End of a Species and the target of said catchphrase. End of a Species is committed to its hatred of GME. The catchphrase will return after the conclusion of this series. Enjoy the show. Now, we got some business to discuss, but before we do, why don't you tell them about the shirt you got on right now? And this is not any, funny stuff, but just, you know.
Well, I mean, it's a little funny. So, we've been taking part in the Disney spectacular that has been WandaVision lately. And we've been watching that. And the show, at this point, the show's over. We've finished everything.
We didn't even talk about I think we may have touched on in our conversations, talking about the show, but I think the meat and potatoes of talking about the show is the fun that you can have with your friends in the weeks in between episodes.
Yeah, everything, it's the speculation.
Yeah.
A lot of the speculation. But also, we speculated some things and were like, hey, maybe this, but then when it didn't happen, we didn't lose our minds and then say the show's terrible.
Yeah,
the show was awesome as it was. But we were like, what if? There was a lot of what if, because we didn't know where this show was going. But anyway, it was great. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but there's a shot of Vision dressed as Vision, but in a campy Halloween costume, not like his iconic looking look, but just this the comic book, but from the 70s kind of
old school.
Yeah,
we drew this with the real shit ink that stays on your fingers type.
Yeah. And Disney has had a selection of merchandise, and we my wife and I, for a little trip, we went to Disney Springs, and then we went shopping and we picked up a couple of stuff. So I'm wearing the Vision green shirt with a yellow, and it's velvet. I didn't know it was velvet when I picked it up originally, but I was
gotta hand it to Disney.
It's a velvet diamond in the center, and I love it because it's subtle and unless you know, you don't know what this shirt is. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then the shirt my wife wanted wasn't there, but it was on shopdisney.com or whatever, and we got it. We had to order it through there because apparently it sold out, because the next day it was sold out and removed from the website, along with some of the other stuff we ordered, baubles and another couple of shirts and a pin and whatever. We picked up some stuff, and then it's the next day it was gone. So we're like, oh shit.
I have to wonder if that has to do with the popularity of the show turning into a lot of people buying the merchandise, or if it's it's COVID still a little bit and
that's the only place
the
we can
factories aren't producing as much, or a combination of the two.
Probably a combination, but
more so the popularity, because
more so the popularity, because we also asked, we're like, hey, do you have this shirt? You have the Green Vision shirt. Do you have the WandaVision shirt? And they're like, oh no, it's sold out. We can't keep them in stock. Yes, popularity. So
yeah, there isn't a corner of the internet that I could go to without some WandaVision conversation happening, which makes my little nerd heart grow 3 sizes.
Yeah, but yeah, it was kind of like a little reprieve from the nightmare fuel we've been living in for the last few months.
Which is a wonderful segue to...
I'm Adam, and this is Jeff. And this is part 2.
And this is part 2, which is in the 24 theme that we have. I think you estimated we're at hour 4.
We're probably at hour 4, where stuff is you're starting to see stuff go bad, but it's usually hour 4 where it's the first take back, and you're like, oh no.
And you may be asking, if you haven't heard the previous episode, and this is the first one, You're crazy because this one actually says part 2.
Yeah.
But just go back and listen to the first one. I mean, it's we're doing like hour-long episodes here because there's a lot to get through. But if you heard the first episode, you may be asking yourself, how are we just like 4 hours in? And in my head, it's like even less, because they've already come to Adam's house, right? They installed the tile, even though it was a painstaking thing. What worse could happen than somebody screaming in the front yard and them not doing a good job, and then coming back and fixing it and it's still not being a good job? So I think where we left off was that the area manager for the company that was hired by the company that doesn't exist.
The major hardware company, yeah.
Yeah, the major hardware company with the made up name. That area manager was whistling to himself as he was getting ready to close another job out, and he had opened your door and looked down and seen all the tape.
There's blue painter's tape all over the floors, and so the blue painter's tape was X's for hollow points, and then like arrows to show like, hey, this is a sharp corner, like, hey, this doesn't meet up to the wall, hey, this isn't cut right, hey, there's grouting splashed up the side of our shower wall, like this is stuff that needs to get fixed. And so he takes about 20 minutes of looking around, and like he like knocks on some of the X's to see that we're not lying, and like he's like, oh man, well, I'm gonna have to talk to my superior. And hearing that from a middle management, he's like, I know something has to get done, but I have zero authority to do anything. So yeah. I have to go.
I just don't want to get yelled at. I say no.
I have to go get Daddy to like handle this now, because like this is bad. So he leaves after seeing everything. My wife starts taking pictures. He's like, he didn't even like do anything. So like we start taking pictures and start cataloging everything that's wrong. 2 days go by, we don't hear anything. Okay, so we go down and we talk to the store manager of the location where we purchased everything, and we're like, hey, this is wrong, this needs to get fixed now, like Christmas is coming up, we got to do X, Y, and Z. And he's like, all right, well, we'll get in with the area manager with Lowe's, who is in charge of all installations, and we'll come to your house and we'll have like a sit down, like a powwow meeting kind of a thing. And so 3 people from 3 different sections come to our house the week before the week of Christmas. So, and that's like they showed up on like a Monday or Tuesday. So it's like, I think it was the Tuesday, because like the middle management guy showed up on Wednesday the previous week. We gave it till Friday. I think I either talked to him either Monday or maybe even Saturday, and then they were in our house like that following either Monday or Tuesday. And so we have people come out, everyone's telling us what happened, and we're explaining everything, we're showing pictures and whatnot, and then the area manager talks to the manager in charge of installations talks to the contract manager and says, your people did a bad job, we're going to have to redo this. And they ask us, do you want to be compensated for this, or do you want the job redone? And they're like, we still want a tile floor, that hasn't changed, we're just like looking at this, and they're like, this isn't acceptable as far as an installation goes, so like, what are we doing? And they're like, okay, well, we'll get somebody on that. And I'm like, and like me being the person of like, I like through this whole thing, like I'm looking at time frame, I'm looking at, we're here and we need to get here. How long is it going to take us to get from A to B or C to F or whatever? Like, how long is it going to take? Because I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, are you going to have somebody in here like this week to start this up? And they're like, oh no, well, we've got to get authorization and go through approvals and do that. I'm like, okay, when are we looking at starting this? Because guess what? Next week is Christmas. Like next Monday, if somebody starts, they're not working Christmas Eve, I can guarantee you that. So we're talking like you've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I think Thursday was Christmas Eve, and then Friday was Christmas Day.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I'm like, so are they going to be able to get this torn out and reinstalled between Monday and Wednesday? because it took 2 people. Like, you're gonna need a team of people out here. Like, you're gonna need like 10 plus people to do this in like 3 days. And they're like, well, we've got to see what we can afford. I'm like, national company, like what we can afford, what's the afford thing? Like, get a qualified person in here to do something. And apparently those don't exist. So
anywhere, there's nobody, just so you know, there's nobody in Florida getting their floor tiled. If you put a comment on this and you say that you live in Florida and you have gotten your floor tiled in the last 365 days, I will call you a liar, because that's not happening, obviously, because of this major national chain
can't handle it.
Which we're dispensing with the pleasantries and just kind of saying the name, but whatever.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's a completely 100%
completely made up name.
Fictional.
But like, if they can't do it, then nobody can do it. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not like a regular, like, small guy could tile floor.
We're not hiring some off the wall derelict, or off the street derelict to come in and like do something. We're hiring trained professionals that have been doing this for years.
At which point did I believe at one point you spoke with one of my siblings?
This was after this time, like after we had our sit down meeting with them. I spoke with your brother, and he kind of gave me like, hey, look, like this is kind of some stuff that's got what you're looking at happening.
My brother did his time with this national place. And escaped, so to speak.
So in any case, the end of that week comes, we don't hear anything. The following Monday comes, and I get a survey, the following Sunday comes, and I get a survey that says, how are you happy or satisfied with your installation? And I was like, I wasn't. So they asked me what was wrong, and then they said they're going to forward it to their manager for their customer. This is the national customer service line or whatever. They're going to forward it to their manager, and then he's going to contact me. Now this, like, not to throw anyone in particular on under the bus, but this guy has been the most useless person. I don't know why this guy has a job still, because he was supposed to contact me and he didn't. He was supposed to cover my bases and make sure everything's going well and he's supposed to be in contact with the store and the installers and the area install manager and be relaying to me what was happening. I've heard from this guy 3 times over the course of 4 months. That's it.
That's a heavy spoiler. heavy spoiler, but it's true.
So that guy should not have a job anymore. I don't know what his area manager of customer service or something like that. It's like, whatever. I'm like, I don't know why he has a job, because one, he never answers the phone, and when I do talk to him, it's for less than 5 minutes, and most of it is apologizing, and then he's like, I'll get back to you, and then that's it.
I'd like to propose a thought experiment, since we've talked about vision here. And you know how he talked about the ship of Theseus and blah blah blah. What if they just suck and have a lot of calls for complaints, and that's why this guy can never get on the phone? I guess it's not a thought experiment as much as it is just like calling him sucky. But maybe that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe someone's just bad at their job and keeps failing upwards. It's basically show business.
Good Lord.
So, but in any case, I get a call from him like by that Wednesday, and I'm like, it's like 2 days before Christmas now at this point, and I'm like, and he's like, we're gonna try and get something installed for you, and we'll look. I'm like, so you're gonna do the thing that someone last week said that they were gonna try and do? Great, thanks for the update, appreciate it. Whatever, go back to smelling your secretary's panties or whatever the fuck it is that you're doing.
Like, don't write emails.
Fucking useless.
Yeah,
Anyway.
We allegedly. I think that's actually what he's doing. There's no allegedly. So come at me.
So in any case, we get told like 2 days before Christmas, not by him, but like I called somebody else. I was like, that phone call with him just pissed me off. So I called somebody else. And so I get in touch with the manager, I get in touch with the installers, I get in touch with it. So basically what happens is I leave a bunch of messages and I don't hear anything over Christmas. Monday, I get a PS. Like, hey, we're going to come out and we're going to start demoing stuff and tearing up the old tile and putting in the new tile on January 4th. We need you to go pick out a new tile because your old, just to make sure that the old tile wasn't, actual shit. We're going to get new tile. And we'll
which we're still selling.
They're still selling the stuff that they say is shitty, and go pick out a new tile. And so we got stuff that was like on sale, and looked good, and we had 3 things picked out, but we're like, oh, this went on sale this week, and it's a difference per plate because we got plank tile per plate. It was like a 30-cent difference. Or whatever, so we'll get this one because this is the one, and they're like, oh, well, that's much better because that's not ceramic, it's porcelain, or the other way around. I don't know which one's supposed to be better. I think it's porcelain is the better one. So
it's tile. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's one that's better and one that's worse, but
in any case,
we're talking about better or worse after 5 years. We're not talking better or worse after 10 minutes.
Yeah. So we pick out a new tile, and they're like, okay, that's a great tile. I'm like, sure it is, because it's not the original one, which you also said was good. Okay, so we pick out a new tile and we pick out. So now
you have no excuse.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, okay, we did everything that you asked us to do. We picked out. We even had options. We're like, these are our options for something similar to what we had, and of course they went with the cheapest because someone's eating the cost of this, and they'll install it. And I'm like, all right, so we wait. We repack whatever we've unpacked and get us back to installation time. At this point, we are told because of the demo process and all the dust that's going to get kicked up from chipping up all the tile and whatever, we cannot stay in the house. So we do have to get a hotel. So we've scheduled to get a hotel. And that's a story on its own, but whatever. We get a hotel, something that's dog friendly that we can take our dogs to. And demo day comes. They show up at 7:30 in the morning, raring to go. We've packed everything in the garage, rearranged some stuff. We were even told, hey, and I don't know why this is a thing, but buy tarps. First of all, buy them, and then tarp over anything you don't want broken. I'm like,
yeah, this is where I'm gonna.
Wait, what? The things we don't want broken? So anything in the house. So you want me to just tarp all of the walls? Because if it's at that point, we're talking about a couple $100 in tarping. Someone's eating that cost. But if it's a couple of tarps, I'm I can deal with $60 in tarps or whatever. Which went to a place called Harbor Freight, and if you're getting cheap stuff like that for tools and stuff, great little place. I bought a bunch of tarps for I think $10 per 20-foot tarp or whatever. Covered up what I need to do. But what I covered up was the vanity that I installed in the master bathroom, brand new, granite countertop, new sink, new this.
Keep that vanity in mind.
It's, that one plus installation and new sinks and whatever is was I don't know, $1,500 around there with everything. The other one's installed. I installed these on top of the old tile that is getting replaced. And I was like, look, who's taking out these vanities? Because I just installed them and they need to be quality taken in and out because I don't want them broken.
I think it bears this, that I say this now, that neither one of us is independently wealthy or wealthy by any means. We just work and we take our paycheck and we put it in the bank and then we spend money. And we save up for things that we want, we're basically middle class, slightly maybe upper middle class for our area.
Yeah.
If that. We're not, rich.
If my car breaks down, I can afford to repair it. But, if my house explodes, I can't do anything about that. That's the catastrophe. I need help at that point.
Correct.
But I'm not I can't go out and buy a car every other weekend. But if something breaks, I can usually pay to get it fixed.
Yeah, and that's just normal. So if I hear all right, for me, if I hear, hey, we're gonna do demolition on your house, we're gonna take out a job that was bad, but we need you to cover up anything that you don't want broken. Maybe I'm wrong, and you guys can definitely correct me. But I could take a couple of, like, I don't know, cherry bombs and throw them in my house and put tarps over stuff so it doesn't get hit and just blow up the floor.
Yeah.
Like, you would think there's a way to remove, maybe it takes a little longer, but there's a way to remove tile where you're not flinging it around like a crazed monkey and just hitting everything. I mean, accidents happen, I get it. But, like, well, hey, cover up the stuff you don't want broken. Like, you should have, like, if you're a demolition crew, unless your primary thing is
tear the whole house down,
tearing down, like, coming in, like, what is it, the sunshine cleaning or whatever?
Yeah, it's like, well, this is like, oh, we need to, like, this needs to get destroyed because
this is condemned.
There was 4 like 3-month-old bodies that have like liquefied into the walls and stuff. These need to be removed. It's done. Like, there's no fixing this. Like, but this is the thing: is like the tile company, the contracted company, hired its own contracted company. So we're now 3 levels down now. Their own contracting company, and all they do is demolition. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna get a tile grinder, and we're gonna get this, and we're gonna that. And I'm like, I'm like, what? They said they had a word for it. It was like a skiff or what? But like, I was like, what? I don't know what that word is. And they're like, oh, it's basically like, it looks like a little mini forklift. And we're gonna take that in your house, and that's gonna chip up the tile. And I was like, I'm like, excuse me? And so, again, Google being my friend, I Googled this thing, and I sent you a picture of it.
I remember getting this text message and seeing this, and I'm like, the only words that came to mind were, it's a Zamboni dildo. So it's basically a thing that looks like a little Zamboni.
Uh-huh.
With a long, like, just...
It's a chipper.
Yeah.
But, like, it looks like a dildo that's basically just fucking your tile up.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
And, like, okay, so, again, I'm ignorant about this stuff.
They called it a blade, too. They called it a blade. I was like, blade? Oh, that's pretty thin for a blade, but okay.
But, and you know what? Like, I'm ignorant about this stuff, so maybe that's a thing. And obviously it is.
And it's thin enough to go through a door frame, surprisingly enough.
Yeah, like, and they brought it to your house, and they used the fuck out of it.
Uh-huh.
The pictures that followed, however, like, you sent me a picture of the dude riding the thing and just outside your door.
Uh-huh.
Then you sent me a picture of the dude, like, starting to chip up the tile.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, all right, something's happening.
Yeah.
And then the next picture I saw, I'll let you describe it, because my jaw dropped.
Well, okay, so demolition starts, and it's like, this is like when I was like, oh, they're taking this serious, because like, it's like 10 guys. Like, there's like 10 guys in here starting to do stuff, and I'm like, okay, so like, people are taking care of stuff. So the Zamboni guy comes in, and like, he starts doing his thing in the main living area or whatever. And then like, he's got like a bunch of like his other other workers, and they're starting to take out the baseboard, and like, they're just taking it out, and then they're tossing it in the garage next to like my leather couch that's in there. And I'm like, what? I mean, like, there's still nails in that shit. Like, and they're like, are we reusing this? And the guy, the area manager from the contract company, is like, yeah, we're using it. And I'm like, they're putting it in a pile. How are they gonna know what goes where? Like, it's gonna be a jigsaw puzzle at that point. Like, there's no, like, you can't reuse that. And he's like, and he's like, try and figure out a way. And then they start taping it up, and they put like tape around it, and then they mark it as stuff as like room 1. Like, what? Which room is the first room? Like, I can't. Like, I mean, like, who labeled these as what rooms were what?
Because that's, a few years ago, we moved into the house that I'm in right now, which is where we're sitting. And that's how I labeled the boxes. I just
it's room 1.
It's room 1.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first room you see,
yeah,
that's the kitchen. But there's no appliances in it. But that room 1 is the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it's room 1. That's how we could tell that that's room 1, and we just throw up
Yeah.
Like, hey, my KitchenAid goes right there on the floor.
Yeah.
Because that's room 1. That's how you label things.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So these guys are tearing out the baseboard while the dildo's fucking the floor. and like these guys aren't using like, so I had to take out the baseboard when I installed the shower and when I installed the vanities. And what you do when you take out baseboards, you get a razor and you cut the caulking that's sealed it to the drywall that's on the wall, and then you use like a paint scraper or something like to like get behind it and kind of pry it off the wall, and then you peel it up.
Lovingly.
Yeah, and you peel it up because if you're going to reuse it, you don't want to break stuff. These guys come in with like not like thin crowbars meant for this, like
we're robbing a bank.
The
crowbar.
Leaky Bandits crowbars. Like,
I like that.
The crowbars they use to break into the McAllister home. And they've got these things and they're just like, they shove it in and they just crack. And I'm like, you're breaking all the drywall. It's like 4 inches above where the baseboard is. That's going to have to get patched. And they're like, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. And I'm like, oh no, the end is nigh. I'm like, what's happening? So we've got they're tearing stuff out, and I'm just seeing stuff starting to break, and like they're chipping tile up, and there's a cloud there. I mean, like in a World War II movie, like there's a cloud of like dust and tile, and I've got like there's masks all over the place now. So I'm like, I've got like my mask usually meant to go out to the grocery store, like over my face with like my shirt also pulled up like over the top of it, and I'm like I'm like I'm in a war zone right now because I'm hearing stuff and everyone's yelling at each other else, and I'm like, I can't make out what's being said, and like they see me walking around, and then like, you know, they're like, oh, there are guys here, and like they quote do better, so whatever, but like other people are starting to take out vanities, and like I'll give you a list of the stuff that we tarped. So we tarped our sliding glass door, we tarped our kitchen cabinets because those are in the ground. We tarped our brand new shower and everything that still hasn't been repaired. But we're like, if they're going to do it again, like, why are we going to repair it? We tarped that up. We tarped both of the vanities and their mirrors to be like, because those are brand new mirrors too. And I'm like,
keep in mind
you have to take these out. But like, we don't, like, while you're chipping up tile, we don't want these broken. Like, we tarped everything. They took the toilets out. They put the toilets still full of water next to my leather couch in the garage. And I'm like, these are leaking water still. Like, all right, so I picked them up and I put them more in the driveway towards where the bushes and stuff are, so that, like, I mean, maybe it'll fertilize the lawn or whatever. But like, these are brand new, the brand new toilets that got put in. And I'm like, which also I had to do. Like, I didn't mention that part, but like when the tile guys left, like they couldn't, like, we were living in the house, so we had to have at least one toilet working. So we had to have them finish one side of the house. The toilet installer wouldn't come out and do 2 different installs in one place of 2 different toilets on 2 different days. They're like, oh, we'll wait till both of them are out and then we'll install them. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like, I have this and this to do. So I installed the toilet and then I installed the other toilet. And I'm like, what was the point of, like, I fucking figured it out. Like, I know how to install toilets now.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, these brand new toilets are now by the bushes in the front yard or in the driveway. And I'm like, okay. And then like I'm hearing like cracking and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? And so they're carrying out the vanity, and like they broke the topper off of the guest vanity. And I'm like, okay.
And that's the picture that I received next.
Yeah. So they broke the topper off of it, and I'm like, all right. And like they put it in the garage, but they put it where they're putting all the baseboard as well. And so like they're throwing the baseboard in this area. They're not gently placing it. They're tossing it in this area, and it's smacking against this vanity, this brand new vanity. So it's got a bunch of nail holes in the front of it now. Also, like when we got around to like surveying the damage after the end of day 1, like it was full of like at the end we didn't actually get around to like looking at stuff until probably Wednesday, but like they had spilled a bunch of water in it, so now the wood all inside is warped. Like, this is a brand new thing that's been installed like 2 weeks, and it's wrecked. The one in the master bath, they chipped the granite countertop on it. They tore it out of the wall with what looks like a hammer. Like like they tore all the drywall out of it. They broke the back because they didn't take all the screws out of it. So they tore it out of the drywall and out of the stud in there. So they damaged not only the drywall, but they damaged the stud as well because they just tore it through the back of it. And so there's a nail hanging out of the back at an angle. And I know I didn't screw it in at an angle, so they put it in at an angle. And like the back support wall of the vanity is now torn out. It's brand new. It's been installed 2 weeks. I'm like,
now this is the part that pisses me off about this.
And then there was no need for it because it was also tarped over. Like the mirror, they tore the mirror out. Like the mirror is nowhere near the wall, like or nowhere near the floor. You're not installing walls. You are now because you've created giant gaping holes and stuff. I can reach in and feel my pipes. That's what she said.
Oh my god!
but like, there's giant gaping holes in my walls now, like of where stuff was torn out. Our master bath has a pocket door that opens and closes. They cracked the front. This giant dildo machine fucked the door, and it said no, and it said come here anyway, and it fucked the door and cracked the frame on it, and now it doesn't close right. And we're like, what? They chipped all the low hanging base of our counters, all's chipped and broken. They bent, I don't know how they did this one, but they bent our sliding glass door that goes to our back. Like they bent the frame on that. And the only thing I can think is that the giant dildo came up and was chipping tile that was next to it, and they packed a bunch of like cardboard boxes like in between that and where the tile stopped. And the only thing I can think of is like it hit the cardboard boxes, and it so that way it didn't shatter the glass, but it bent the frame on it. And I'm like, so I've got like handprints and holes and dust and like it's basically like, and broken this and broken that, and I'm like, what? I'm like, what in the hell happened? Like these are professional like, I mean, do they just demolish houses? Is that what they did? And they're like, can you pull it back a little bit? And I'm like, yeah, we'll pull it back a little bit so you can just do the tile or whatever. But they destroyed everything. The baseboard ended up getting replaced because it's not usable. Because like only like a third of it was taped and bundled, and even then it said like room 5. And I'm like, we found room 1, we found room 3, 4, and 5. We don't know where room 2 is. And like, and then there was a bunch of loose stuff, and we're like, and we don't know which ones those are. We had no idea.
You know, this is the thing. Like, I'm looking at all this from the outside, right? And and so we talk routinely, and you keep me updated, and like, hey, well, what's going on with the house? And every time, and I just remember, and even to this day, like, so what's going on with the house? And I know you take this sigh, like, I mean, fucking house.
Yeah.
And this day, I remember thinking, it's kind of ridiculous that they're asking you to tarp up the stuff that you don't want broken. How about don't break anything?
Yeah.
There you go. There's a solution. But then you go and tarp the shit up.
Yeah, and they break it anyway.
And they go, oh, like at least, oh, you know what? We need to take out the vanity, but there's a tarp on it. So this is extra important.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull on it with all my might and rip it off. Not like, I'm sure that there is a way to uninstall or to remove stuff without breaking it.
I watched YouTubes on it. That's how I got the old ones out. Like I put them out at the road, like mostly intact.
It might take, an hour longer throughout a day for
they
people
had
who
8
know
hours.
what they're doing.
They didn't, as far as I know, like it's not like I told them like, hey, you got to be out by noon. Like you guys got to do what you got to do. But like, yeah, just
and so that's the part that angers me is that like you say, hey, it's almost like an insult. It's almost like I have to assume you're doing it on purpose. And
you like this Fabergé egg? Smash!
like I picture Jackie Chan in Rush Hour at the end when he's trying to save all the artifacts, and there's this vase and there's this whole cool stunt scene, and then all of a sudden somebody shoots it, and it's like, of all the things, I pointed them out to you, and you're not like this force of this hostile force coming into my house. You're somebody whom I'm paying to do a service, and I get it that you want to do is everybody wants to make as much money as possible. I would love to go to work and be like, hey, I'm going to get out 15 projects today and then just go like super fast. But sometimes you can't. And so if you know, and more so on the contractor company that started this whole thing, the tile place, if it was me and I'm like, all right, I've already fucked up twice on this shit. Let me sit on this job and walk these guys through it. Like, hey, you guys came in a little hot. Let's direct
reel it in.
Like reel that in. I don't need this guy's house broken. You see that thing on the drywall? And so you would think, and you know, whatever, you would, as I'm hearing about the drywall being broken, I'm like, you know what? Fine. We'll just, it is what it is. But when I heard about the vanity, that's when I'm like, it's not even my house. And my face started turning red. So it's pissing me off. And then it gets worse. So I'll, you know, go from there. Cause like, they break you got the drywall breaking and I'm getting these pictures. You got the vanity broken. And then,
okay, so they got the vanity broken, and like during this whole time, like the middle management guy, who has, you know, like he makes a big deal of it, and he's like, there's no real power, but like he's like, yeah, we're getting your giant dildo fucker, like, and like that machine costs $40,000, and I'm like, I don't care what the fuck it costs, as long as it does a good job, like whatever. And so like they're going through this project, and we're going through whatever, and I'm pointing out stuff, and I'm like pointing pictures, and I'm like, hey man, what's going on? And like they ripped out the first mirror, and I'm like, hey, they don't need to take out the mirror. And he runs inside as they're getting ready to tear the mirror off the second bathroom, and they're like, hey man, don't take the mirror down. I'm like, it's under a tarp. Like, there's no reason to take it down in the first place. Like, leave it there. How about we just leave it there? Can we leave it there? I say we leave it there. Like,
that's my vote.
That's my vote.
Leave it.
Leave it the fuck alone. So they get through and they get done, and then the destruction crew's loading up the dildo fucker Zamboni, and I'm kind of just surveying like like at the end, like not at the end, in the beginning of Batman v Superman.
Oh my god.
Bruce Wayne.
That's actually apropos on many levels.
Bruce Wayne is walking in Metropolis outside his Wayne Enterprises building. And like he's helping children and getting people out, and there's like a random horse that was obviously like, it was like a police horse or whatever, but like it's been abandoned, and he's like surveying what's happened. And that's what I'm doing, is like I'm surveying what's happened. There's like the dust is settling in my crow's feet. Fucking the worry lines that have been generated from this job in the first place. Like, and I'm just like I'm in like I'm trying to dust off my clothes, and I'm watching Superman, or the dildo Zamboni, drive away. And I'm like,
I can actually see you looking at that area manager and asking him if he bleeds.
So in any case, while the demolition is happening, I meet the new installer of the tile, the guy that's supposed to come tomorrow, and he's supposed to start installing the tile. And I meet him. And he's like, hey, yeah, I'm a certified contractor. I'm a licensed and insured. I'm this, that, and the other. Like, I've been doing construction and this for a long time. I know how to make things look good and make things get working. And like, I work hard and I work long hours, and I want to get the job done. I'm like, awesome. Like, when can you get this done by? And he's like, well, we'll start tomorrow. And I was like, I think we can get you done by Sunday. And I'm like, awesome. Sunday. Sounds good. Let's do Sunday. So he says that he's going to start installing stuff tomorrow, and he's like, you know, I can be on the job site a lot sooner because like I showed up here with my son in our RV. Can I park in your driveway? And I'm like, I mean, if you can I'll park on the side. You can park on the driveway if you need to, you know, bring it with you, I guess. He's like, no, can I stay here? Like, he wants to park and live in his RV in my driveway. And I'm like, what?
he's like, don't worry, I've got gas and hot water. Like, I won't need to like go inside or anything. And I'm like, what? And I'm like,
first started in the frying pan. And we're slowly falling out of it.
We're now looking over the frying pan and into the fire, and we're like, that looks warm. And so I'm like, let me call my wife and see how she feels. And so I call her, and we're like, this is a no, right? And she's like, yeah, I think it's a no. And I also think there's laws against that as well. And I looked it up, and yes, if you want to know what your local laws are, go to a place called munichcode.com, and you can go to not only your state, but your city, and find out what your local ordinances are about how you have to keep your lawn, how you have to like park your boats, how you have to like store things, and like what your garbage policies are, and so on and so forth. And what I, lo and behold, went and looked it up. And yes, our city forbids living in an RV outside a home. And
harshly.
And there's a fine up to $2,000 for someone doing such a thing. And I'm like, and I told him, I was like, look, if you want to stay and live in my driveway, go ahead. But if I get fined, you're paying it.
And that makes that's a difficult fine to make somebody else pay, because I can tell you that, and this is just the stuff that happens in the city in which we live. Like if your lawn's too long and they fine you, or if you have somebody, living in an RV and they fine you, they put a lien on your house for that amount. And so they don't take that payment right then, but when you go to sell your house, they go, "Hey,
you owe us another $13,000."
Yeah,
for shit.
We want our cut, and it's not so much that somebody can reimburse you, but then it makes it harder if you ever want to leave. It makes it harder to sell your house, because as soon as somebody looks it up and they're like, "Oh, there's liens on this." Liens to somebody buying your house just says something is wrong here, and maybe I don't want this headache.
Yeah. So
because I don't know what else is under the covers of this thing.
So in any case, we're like, hey, no, like we're not doing that. We're not playing that game. So he's like, oh, well, that's too bad, because like we're gonna have to find a place, and it costs us like $165 a week to like keep our RV somewhere. And I'm like, you chose to come here in an RV to do contract work. Like, I don't know what your deal is.
You should have had him talk to that area manager, and he would have said, that's the cost of doing business. That's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But like, he's taking measurements of the house, and he's doing this and he's doing that. And he's like, well, I'm going to make my offer to the area manager guy. And I'm like, offer? Like, are you not with the flooring company? He's like, well, we've just picked up contracts with them, so like we're fresh. I'm like, so wait, you're not like the tenured, like most senior guy, like you're kind of like outside, like this is your. He's like, well, we're working for them, but we're doing this, but like, don't worry, we've got the experience. And he gives me his card, and it says 10 years of experience and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, it doesn't say, but nowhere on there did it say tile. It said construction, reconstruction, and remodeling. And I'm like,
I don't like this.
I'm like, okay,
something here is wrong.
But like, he starts talking to me, and like he comes off very impressionable and very likable, and I'm like, all right. And his son, though timid, was very likable too. Like, he was young, he was 23, whatever. The guy who I'll call as the foreman, because it's a father-son team, was 62. I'm like, okay. But I mean, like, hey, it's 2020, 2021 now. Like,
62 is the new
62 is the new 42 almost. Depends on how hard you were living and how well you're eating, I guess. But I'm like, whatever. Like, if he say he can get it done, he can get it done. So I expressed my concern, but I'm like, hey, yeah, you can't stay here. You got to find a spot and whatever. And he's like, all right, can I get a key to your house? I'm like, no. No, you cannot get a key to my house. Someone will be here every morning to make sure that everything is unlocked and working for you.
Now, I'll just say this. It's not a far-fetched request, but usually I would expect that that's something that would come from you. Like, you'd be like, hey, here's a key in case you need to get in. Not just somebody coming out like, I've just met you. Plus, I'm telling you that I don't work for this company, so I'm just a random dude that they hired.
I didn't do any background checks.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the contracting company, because they're going to be putting their name on this, has done some background checks. And I ask about it, and like, yeah, we got references, and he's really good. And I'm like, okay. Like, he apparently, like, he spent a lot of time during the hurricanes over the last couple of years, like, going to houses and remodeling and getting them fixed or whatever. And they got references. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Cool.
It's cool. Like,
but you don't get a key. Like,
but yeah, I'm not giving you a key to stuff. And then here's the other thing: is he says is like, I'm not going to steal your stuff, man. And I'm like, and that's like, and I put this to the area manager when we were alone. I was like, he told me, don't worry, I'm not going to steal your stuff. And if I just meet someone and he's like, you know, like I meet this girl and she's like, I'm your healthcare advisor. He's like, don't worry, I don't kill kittens. And I'm like, this bitch kills kittens.
Yeah, that's the first thing I'm thinking. I'm like, yo, there's a kitten graveyard. Like, bring the cadaver dogs to this bitch's backyard, and they're gonna start howling.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, what? I'm like, don't worry, I'm not gonna, like, I've met you for 10 fucking minutes, and like, you're asking for a key to live in your portable home in my driveway with a key to the house.
This motherfucker might be Catwoman.
And I'm like, no, someone will be here. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So I had taken time off this week.
And you have dogs, and they're not like, you know,
they're big, mean-looking dogs.
They're not like little dogs.
They're not yappy dogs.
You can fake somebody out and tell them that the kill command is 2 syllables. Like, it's quick to come out my mouth.
So, in any case, like, he doesn't get a key or whatever, and he's supposed to start Monday or Tuesday, and then like this is the end of Monday, and like the smoke is settling.
Dawn of the first day.
Dawn of the first day, and I'm like, oh, all right. So, also it's a good thing we didn't replace the bathtub, because the bathtub that did get a chip, now all along where that tile is, they dildo fucked it. And now there's a bunch of cracks and crevices and whatever else.
So now it's really broken.
Like,
you thought it was broken before. Yeah, it wasn't broken. Yeah. You know what? It's like that's not a knife. Like the crocodile underneath.
This is a broken fucking this is a broken shower.
I'm curious, because I know I think we may have talked about this. You have more notes than I do. Like, I'm again from the outside looking. How long was this second round supposed to take?
So he said he was going to start Tuesday and he was going to be done by Sunday.
Okay, that's
reasonable. Starting fresh, and
especially like the house is freshly Zamboni dildoed, and so you have a nice clean slate to work off of. So from Tuesday to Sunday, that makes sense.
Yeah, it would. So day one, Tuesday starts. They start putting in tile or whatever, and they're going a little slow. Apparently, they requested some special installation device or whatever from the area manager guy, and he went and bought it for them, which was it's like clips that go in, and they're spacers, and then they give you these little wedges to put in between the tiles to keep everything level all the way around. And I'm like, oh,
that's cool.
That's cool.
I like that.
So yeah, it's
attention to detail.
Attention to detail. And then they also got leveler, and they're leveling the areas, and they're going like area at a time to get everything level and whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the end of day one happens. Excuse me. And we're looking at the front spare bedroom. We'll call it room 5. Fucking whatever.
All right.
They starting in room 5. And they're starting in the corner in there, and they're going to work their way towards the rest of the house. And we're like, okay. And
your house is, and it may or may not matter, but just for full your house is what, 3 bedroom, 2 bath?
3 bedroom, 2 bath.
3 bedroom? All right.
3 bedroom,
2 bedroom, 2 bath.
3 bedroom, 2 bath. And they start in one corner of the far side of the house. The master is on the other side, and then they're working their way through. At the end of day one, they've gone through a quarter of that one room. I'm like, well, they were. I'm like, well, they were putting leveler down and stuff. And they're working like they're getting their bearings.
Yeah,
they're working their way. They're trying to figure out what's
getting to know
going on.
you day.
Yeah, it's a getting to know you day. They're trying to figure out because they were asking questions about where hoses were and like how long of a hose that we've got and like if whatever. And I'm like, okay. So they're getting their bearings, and then once they get on a roll, it'll figure out.
Like a snowball.
Yeah. Day 2 comes and goes. They've almost finished that room. Almost, but they didn't do the closet. They didn't do the fixtures around the door. And they worked their way across the hall and across the bathroom and into the other bedroom, and they're starting to work in there. I'm like, okay. Weird, but okay. So that's the end of day 2. Day 3, they flushed out those 2 rooms. Still didn't do the closets and still didn't do the areas around the door. And I was like, why aren't you just finishing this up and working your way into the bathroom? And they're like, well, we don't have the tool to cut around the doors yet. And I'm like, you don't have, like, you're installing tile. Like, you come with the tools. Like, I don't have the tools. Like, I don't install tile. So, like, I don't have the tools. I'm like, well, we'll get them, but we don't have a saw to cut them at these funny angles to go around the doors and stuff. And I'm like, okay.
That's a bad sign when you look at a door and you say funny angles.
Yeah.
Because again, I can't stress this enough, and this is more of a compliment of your house than anything else. You have a normal house.
Yeah.
You do not have like a door that was designed by Salvador Dali or some shit.
I don't have round rooms.
Yeah, it's just a house that has rooms that have 4 walls and doors that have, door frames and the doors in the door frame, and then the stuff goes around the door frame. So like me, if it's like me, I do a lot of stuff with computers, and if I go into a computer and you're like, here's my hard drive, I'm like, well, I don't do work with like funny storage things that you have. Like if I'm going into a house to tile it and I know tile, then I'm like, I'm going to come across
a door
that, is not at a right angle, but it's at the door, or the angle that the door frame is at.
Yeah.
And not like a Beetlejuice door frame, like just a regular door frame.
A regular square or rectangular door frame. Yeah.
And you just, hey, there's the door, and you open it and close it, and then it has a frame around it, and it makes contact with the floor at some point.
Yeah.
So that's a bad sign.
So they were like, well, we're going to get the tool and we'll get to there. And I'm like, and so they continue on. And by Saturday,
the day before they're supposed to be done.
The day before they're supposed to be done, they are just making their way into the main living room, which is basically it's the living room and dining room because it's one big long room that's kind of like spacious and whatever.
As an open floor plan.
It's an open
house.
floor plan kind of thing, and like this is the dining area and this is the living area, and there's no separation there.
Also the Dungeons and Dragons area.
Yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons area, and they're just now making their way into that, and they're like, "Oh, we're not used to all this hard work," and I'm like, "Okay." Like we need a day off. We need to take a day off. We've been working really hard, and I'm like, okay. And then the guy proceeds to tell me, he's like, yeah, I'm huffing and puffing, and like I think I have stomach cancer and I might have a heart attack. And I'm like, I don't need this fucker having a heart attack while he's laying tile in my house. Then I gotta deal with his ghost for the next 30 years.
Oh, God.
Like, I don't need that shit. Like, okay, fucking take a day off. Like, if you gotta take a day off, take a day off. It's fine. Like, take your day off. So they take the day they're supposed to be done there is their first day off. They are probably 18% of the total of the house done putting tile on the ground, not grouting it, not fixing the baseboards, just putting tile on the ground so that it's in place.
I remember when you called me about that day off, and I'm an asshole. Like I don't, because if I have to work 6 days out of the week, I work 6 days out of the week, and it's just is what it is. And I thought to myself, like, have a heart attack. Like, I didn't, like, you didn't, you're a white dude. right? You didn't, and not to, you know,
I don't take insult to that, but like,
not to like, we may get canceled from this, but you didn't like take a boat to wherever the fuck they were, strap them in on the boat, and bring them to your house and say, start laying tile.
Jesus.
They voluntarily got in their RV.
They're getting paid for their services.
A tile job of a house is not an easy. It wouldn't be easy for me.
Yeah.
That's why if you said to me like, "Hey, can you help me lay tile?" I'd be like, "Yo, you're one of my best friends in the world. Go fuck yourself, man. I'm not laying tile. I know ahead of time." And I've never I've held a tile in my hand. That's my tile experience.
Yeah.
I've never made it come in contact with anything adhesive. Not tape, not scotch tape, not duct tape, not nothing. So, but I know that if I had to be in your house all day laying tile, I'm going to be fucking tired.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah.
These guys have experience. So you knew like, hey, I'm getting in my RV. Maybe I get an extra Red Bull. Maybe I grab another person on the way and just say, hey, this is going to be a strenuous job because it's an entire house that we're tiling and they got fucked up twice. So it's going to be strenuous. Like at this point, yo, you did this to yourself. Call 911 if you got to, but tile my fucking house. I'm just saying. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Hate me if you gotta, but like, goddamn.
So they take their day off. At this point, like they're like, "Oh yeah, we're probably gonna be done by like next Thursday." And I'm like, okay, so we're adding a week. So like we're living in a hotel at this point. We're ferrying the dogs to and from because they don't. It's not like I can leave the dogs.
You say that like it's a tiny thing, and I like adding context for the listener. Like ferrying the dogs to and from. You have 2 big ass huskies.
Yeah.
Which means you have to. You're meeting these motherfuckers when they get to your house. So you have to wake up early enough to get these 2 dogs, one of which, mind you, like you name your dogs after Sith Lords, and that's just one of the things that I love. Mm-hmm. But one of them is actually a goddamn Sith Lord. Like this motherfucker's touched in the head. And so you have to like wake up, get yourself ready, and then go to the dogs like, hey, you guys are in the house every day, and the only other place you go is the vet in the park. But now you're sleeping somewhere that you don't know where you're at. Mm-hmm. And now get in the car and go home, and then get in the car and go back to the hotel.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not a 2-second operation, but you knew you were gonna do it, and you're expecting to do it for X amount of days, and now
we're past that
X times 2.
So we've extended our hotel stay to the end of till the Thursday. They say that they're going to be done. And we're like, okay, so we're adding another like roughly a week onto this. I'm like, okay, so we'll talk about that then. And then, you know, they said that they would pay for our hotel, and we're like, okay, well, you know, they're not paying for it outright. They're not putting it on their credit card. Like, I got to put it on mine, and they say they're going to pay me back. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll just keep receipts. And so ferrying these like 2 70-pound huskies back and forth, and then like letting them spend like, yeah, you can't go in the house, bud. You have to stay in the backyard, you know, your fenced in backyard in the back. And then they're like, what the fuck? Like, who are these people in our house? And like, why are we out here?
My toys are in there. My food is in there. And there's an old guy, and I'm hearing his heart. It's about to go.
So we're doing this, and we're going back and forth. I'm working. My wife has taken a vacation for this week that is now week 2, and she's like, I was going to use this to like get the house back together, but like now I'm just waiting for them to do stuff. And so, and like during this time while they're working, like we're having lunch and stuff in the back, and like we're making, like, we got the grill going sometimes, and we got burgers and dogs, and we're like, hey, you want some food? So we're feeding these fuckers too. And we're like, okay. And that started to kind of come around as like we could feed them when we could afford to, kind of a thing, because it's like if they left to go get food, they'd be gone 2.5 hours. So we'd lose 2.5 hours out of a day, as opposed to like if we fed them there, they'd be back to work in like 45 minutes.
Do you take a 2.5 hour lunch break? Anybody? If you're listening to this podcast and you go to work and you take a 2.5 hour, like I know work sucks, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
it's whack. And some people get a half hour. If you get a 2.5 hour lunch break, please leave a comment. Let me know.
We're interested.
I want to learn about human life
Yeah.
outside of my house. So tell me if you take a 2.5 hour lunch break routinely when you Okay, continue.
So we're like, every once in a while we'll feed them. We'll have burgers, dogs, or like microwavable pizzas, or like whatever. Our oven is not in our house. We can't use it. It's on the back porch. Our refrigerator is on the back porch, plugged in, and that's where we're keeping like drinks and milk and whatever, so we can eat when we can. We told them like, hey, here's bags of chips, here's this, here's that. We're bringing them food from the hotel, like muffins and cereal and whatever. Like, hey, here's food.
Oh, the continental breakfast.
Because they're also telling us that like how broke they are and how much they need this job to be done so they can get paid. And I'm like, we got fucking Huckleberry Finn and Tiny Tim fucking working in our house.
Yikes.
And I'm like,
that's true.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right. So, I mean, we'll try and help because, like, we're not heartless people, but, like, they're doing a job and they're like, yeah, we're waiting for a paycheck so that we can eat. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, all right. So we're trying to help, but, like, it's not our job. Like, ultimately, it's not our job to feed you. Like, that's your deal. We're doing that because, like, we're nice people and you seem
because you're human.
They seem to be landed on kind of thick. Yeah, exactly. And, like, whatever. But they seem to be doing a good job or whatever. And then we find out that these two guys are also paid to not only do our tile, but they're going to fix all the baseboard. They're going to fix all the drywall. And then they're going to fix the door frame that's busted and the pocket door. And they're going to fix all of our closets. And they're going like, these guys got paid to do everything. And I'm like, at this pace. And I'm doing calculations in my head. And I tell my wife, I'm like, this started on the 4th. At this pace and this rate, like I felt like Vision, like kind of trying to calculate when the kids were going to be born.
Yeah.
And like, the rate of incline or whatever. I'm like, with luck, we'll be back in the house on like the 22nd or 23rd.
Mind you, my brother's prediction was Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And this was like the second week of December. And we both looked at him like, you're crazy.
No.
It's impossible.
So my prediction was January 23rd will be starting to move back into the house. That was my prediction. So in any case, like Sunday they took off. They work Monday, Tuesday. I'm working. What did I have? I took Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. I was off Monday, Tuesday. I had to go back to work Wednesday. And Wednesday a bomb dropped. Like, not an actual bomb, but bomb enough. So my wife shows up at 8 o'clock in the morning when is their general start time with the dogs or whatever. They're not there. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Whatever. Like, we have his card. And she's like, should I call him? It's like 8:45. And I'm like, I'd say, like, if he's not there by 9, like, call him. So, like, 5 to 9, he shows up. They get out, they go in the house, they're not doing any work. They get all huffy and whatever, and then they're not saying hello to my wife, and I'm like, don't disrespect my wife in her own house. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? And then all of a sudden, like, they get mad, and they're like, we're not working anymore. Like, we haven't been paid for our last job before we started this job, and since we're not getting paid, we're not doing any work. So, like, okay, you're holding my house hostage for you to get your payment? And I'm like, okay, how much is this? Like, I get on the phone with the area manager guy for the contractor, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
Strap into your seats right now.
I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, they're not working. They're holding my house hostage. They say they don't have any money for gas or food, but they got to my house and we've been feeding them. Like, I don't know where their fucking money's going. And like, apparently it's going to their RV park or whatever. And I'm like, what are we doing? And they're like, oh, well, we haven't paid them because they don't have any insurance. I'm like, what? I'm like, these two people that are contractors through you that you hired don't have insurance, and they're working in my house and have been for the last week and a half.
And one of them has a ticking time bomb in his chest.
One of them
possibly.
One is saying he's gonna fucking croak on my fucking floor.
What is happening right now? Like, I feel like I'm going through this again, and it's not my house again. It's not happening to me. But I'm like, I could feel my hands getting like clammy, and I'm starting to sweat. Like, I'm hot right now. Like, what is happening right now? What is this story even?
So I'm on the phone. Like, then they need to be. Excuse me. Then they need to get out of my house. Like, I don't want them on my property if they're not insured, installing stuff, working with tools and shit. And also, they're not the cleanest of people, because when they would finish at the end of the day, like, they just kind of like drop everything that's like in their hands and walk to their car. So like, there's like sitting outside my house was like crowbars and bricks and like sawhorses and all kinds of other stuff, like buckets and like mixers and drills and stuff just scattered about. And I'm like, you want to put them in the house where we lock it and all your stuff won't get stolen? And he's like, well, if it gets stolen, it gets stolen. I'm like, what?
You can't afford Cheerios. And you don't care if your
drills get stolen and shit?
Like, a drill is significantly more expensive than some Cheerios.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to go somewhere for a week and I had no money, and I'm only saying that because in my office I keep a large size box of Cheerios. That's like $5.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to eat Cheerios for a week because I have no money,
yeah,
I could take $5, buy a thing of Cheerios, and every morning and ration it morning. Like, that could get me going for a week.
Yeah,
and I'm good, right?
Yeah,
and I keep it in my office because like my dogs like Cheerios, so I'll feed them Cheerios. But like, you're saying I can't afford, like, an Egg McMuffin is $1.
Yeah,
right. So like, a drill is more expensive than $1.
Yeah.
You cannot, like, if a drill gets stolen, you can't afford a drill.
If it gets stolen, it gets stolen. What? Motherfucker, like...
you don't have insurance.
And you don't have insurance? So, like, I'm like, well, what the fuck? Like, why did you let them on the job in the first place? Like, why did you hire them? And they're like, well, when they started their first job with us, they gave us an insurance card, but it expired on the 18th of December. So when we went to like pay them, we have to check all their, like, you don't check all their records before they show up to a job? What if they went in there and just like, they're like, it's Happy Fun Day, and just took crowbars to fucking walls and mirrors and priceless artifacts and whatever else, like, and they don't have insurance? Like, you're responsible for that. Like, be a responsible, like, you're a company that like has liability, dude. Like, what the hell? And so here, this is also the other thing is like, I was like, well, what happened with the last job? Did it get installed? And they're like, no, they didn't finish it in time. I'm like, what? What was the job? And they're like, they had to lay 300 square feet of carpet.
Yo, all right, no, hold on.
And they couldn't get...
It's worth noting two things. First off...
they had 2 days to do that, and they couldn't get it done.
Okay, two things. Number one, this contracting company is the one that the blue nationwide place chose over the one that they used to have. So I'm wondering, was the old one considerably worse? Which means nobody that goes to Blue Place has gotten any tile done ever. Or was it just more expensive and like, what the fuck?
This is the lowest bidder kind of a thing.
But the second thing to note is, you know those Empire commercials, right? The Empire flooring commercials, 800-588, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay. In the time it takes them to sing the jingle, the little cartoon guy lays carpet. You know that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a fear of laying tile because it's complicated. If you told me, hey, help me lay tile, I'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
If you said, hey, help me with carpet, I'd be like, what? What time? What time you need me at? I got 15 minutes. Let's go. What do we got to do? Roll it out and stand on it for a bit?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then you staple it down or whatever the fuck you do.
You put nails around all the edges.
Yeah.
And you put a glue in the middle.
And it's done.
And you roll it out. Yeah. At 300 square feet, he couldn't do it in like 2 days.
The room we're sitting in is probably 300 square feet. And it's tiny. Like, this is a tiny office, and it's 300 square feet. Look on my Instagram. It's the room we're in. And we're in carpet. The only thing that's different is that it has like a little inlet where the door is, but like this was done in less than a day.
Yeah, this was done by a carpet company in probably 4 hours,
And it's a loft.
3 hours,
And it's a loft, so it's not like it's got like a floor, like they had to set something under it.
yeah.
And it was done in less than a day.
Yeah.
A half a day.
Yeah. So I'm like, why is this guy in my house? I'm like, how much was he supposed to, like, why are they holding my house out? Like, how much are they holding my house hostage for? $200. $200 that they were supposed to get paid for that, or $300. Sorry, $300 that they were supposed to get paid for that, and they're holding my house hostage for $300, and they're like, we can't eat, we don't have gas, we don't have this, and I'm like, I'm sorry for your problems, but like, the fuck, man, like.
So with the tile guys with the RV tile guys walking off the job, we're a little over, but we're gonna wrap this episode up.
Well, I just want I want to kind of finish with this.
Okay,
is that we're in the middle of the second week of this, and they've walked off the job after arguing, getting like the guy mailing off and making sure his insurance is good, them getting a copy of it, blah blah, getting all this stuff laid out and whatever. The area manager for the contract company gets a check from their home office, which is 3 hours or so away, gets the check, drives it to them and hands it to them at like 1:00 in the afternoon. And then they drive away, and that's the end of the day. And I'm like, are they coming back? I'm like talking to my wife. I'm like, did they say they're coming back? Are they like, what's happening? Or are we getting new people? Or like, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. And so I'm like, how much work is done? And they're like, they've got like 3 rows of tile, because we got plank tile, like plank tile that looks like wood or whatever. Mm-hmm. They got 3 rows of plank tile done in the living room, dining room area. And I'm like, that's nothing. Like that's 18 inches. Like, yeah, that's nothing. Like, what's like they have the master, the rest of that room, the kitchen, the laundry. Like, that's. What do we do? What if they don't come back? Like, what? Like, do they have any? Did he say that the middle management guy say that they have anyone else coming out or anyone else available? They're like, no. Like, when they left, he just apologized and then he left. I'm like, okay. So I guess I'll see you when I get off work. But like, yeah, that's that.
That's what happened. I guess, and then we'll pick it up next time.